Hey there, Megan Jansen with Employee Wellness Solutions Network. I'm still on a year-long mission and talking to so many influential people in the space of health and wellness, specifically in our workplaces here in Canada. Today is no exception to the rule. I have tracked down a very, very, very busy old lady, Dr. Gillian Mandich. Hey, Gillian, thank you so much for taking a few minutes out of your busy, busy day for me.
Hi, Megan. I'm so happy to be here chatting with you.
You know, it's kind of a bit of a reunion
It
because
totally
your fourth year of your undergrad in health promotion here at Western in London, you were one of my students. Do you remember that? That was a long time ago.
I do. And you know what? A lot of my career path, like if I look back, it's from health promotion. Like I remember working with you and we went into a law firm in
Yep.
London
Yep.
and we created like a health promotion program. And to this day, like my PhD is in health science, but my area of specialization is health promotion. So, thank you because that was really the start of this entire research journey that I'm on. So
Well,
I
I
love
feel
so much.
privileged to be your start. So let's just put it that way. You've done tons since. You have a PhD in health science with a specialty in health promotion that you got at Western University, as I mentioned. You're the happiness expert on the social and breakfast television. How cool is that? And you're the founder of the International Happiness Institute of Health Science Research. Like, do you sleep?
Yes, I do because I am a bear if I don't.
I hear you. Let's get right into, you are an expert in happiness, and I absolutely think the world needs more of this. So let's talk, loaded question, first off the bat, how does happiness affect health?
In like pretty much every way possible. It's so interesting because my research background was actually childhood obesity. And I found happiness research because I was starting to look in terms of health because in obesity research, you use your weight as a cutoff for different stuff. And I thought the number on a scale doesn't necessarily tell us about our health. It may, and it may not. And so I went into the literature and because I'm interested in health promotion, what I'm most passionate about is figuring out how do we live the best life possible? What can we know or do in order to really enhance our life from where it is now? So I went down this rabbit hole in terms of research, and I was so shocked to find that basically when you look at happiness and health, everything good that you want, happiness is positively correlated with. So people, when you compare unhappy people to happier people, they have lower rates of cardiovascular disease, they heal faster from injury, they have stronger immune systems, they live longer, they have longer and more fulfilling marriages, they're more creative, they're better problem solvers, like pretty much everything really good, both in terms of your physical health, but also how you show up for people around you. And it kind of acts like a buffer. So when you're feeling stressed or anxious or you're feeling down, happiness, even on a physiological level, lessens that impact. So when you're looking for something that's very potent in terms of affecting all areas of your health, happiness is a great way to go about it.
How do you find it though? Because I mean, I know so many people struggle with their own, with really their own happiness. So how do you find it? Do you work on focusing on what makes you happy and doing more of that? Share some tips and thoughts about that.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. So I kind of, when I started researching happiness, thought the goal was to figure out how do I be happy all the time and how do I not feel sad anymore or depressed or anxious or stressed. Turns out that in terms of like healthy psychological functioning, that isn't the goal. So first of all, I was shocked to learn that. So what in terms of happiness, happiness grows like a muscle. So just like if you want to get stronger, you go to the gym and you work out over and over again and slowly it builds. There is a huge piece of our happiness that's a skill-based learned behavior. And so you can build it like a muscle. So actually what was interesting, it's hard to tease out what's genetic versus what's environmental in research. And especially when you look at like, even when I was doing childhood obesity, if you have a child that's overweight or obese and parents that are overweight or obese, how much of that is genetic versus how much of that is environmental? It's hard to figure out. What researchers were actually able to do was to take twins that were genetically identical that were separated at birth. So then you can start to look at genetics versus environment. And what they found was about 50% of our total capacity for happiness is genetics. So some of us can thank our parents or not. And that only accounts for up to 50%. This part was shocking to me. So only about 10% of our happiness is environmental. So what's around us.
Wow.
I had to like go back and read that 3 times when I first read it. Cause I was like, what do you mean? I was going through my grad school at the time, and it was super stressful. And I thought, there's no way this 10%. But what happens, I looked into it, when you look into the psychology of it, we're very adaptive creatures as humans. And so we live our life every single day. We show up. So even though things may bother us or may frustrate us, our body is sort of used to that. So it only accounts for actually about 10% of our total capacity, which is great. And when you're sitting in traffic or whatever, it doesn't impact us as much as we would think. So then you're left with 40%. And that 40% is a skill-based learned behavior. So that's the piece that's like our personal responsibility. And that's the piece that my research focuses on, because that's, in terms of what's amenable to change, like that's where we can really focus and see really big results. And you can, just like if you want to get stronger, you practice it. Happiness really is a practice. It's something we have to work at every single day. And there'll be days where we have lower days and happier days. And that's totally part of the human experience. And you can actually, with practice, build your happiness muscle so that your lows get higher and your highs get higher. That's kind of the goal. It's this sort of uptrend. It's not eliminating negative emotions. It's learning to make them a little bit higher, and then your highs get higher.
That is fascinating. Fascinating to me. So what are some of those things as takeaways one could focus on to build up that 40% that you say is changeable behavior?
Yeah. So actually, I'll tell you a little bit about a study I just finished at Western University. So I actually had to partner with people from Berkeley in California to finish my PhD, because nobody was researching happiness at Western. And so what they did was they created these videos that taught different skills that would help with that 40%. And so students at Western watched one video a week. It was about 20 to 30 minutes for 4 weeks. So they learned about things like how to practice gratitude, meditation or mindfulness, the value of relationships and friendships and social connection, what happiness actually is, why happiness isn't a destination, why it's something that we work at. And in 4 weeks in my study, I saw changes in the students' happiness. So it's so cool, because when you read research and stuff, it's one thing, but to actually see in your own data, people's happiness change. And that was strictly education. That wasn't with any sort of behavior change or measure like that. So that's really exciting, because you can just build from there. And what was was also really interesting, when I recruited for my study, I did like a calculation to see how big sample size I needed. I needed 60 students. I sent out one mass email to all the undergrads at the university, and I asked, do you want to learn how to be happy? Enroll in this study. And I had 1,282 students respond.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Really?
So,
Holy
cow. We all want to learn to be happy, and we all want to be happy. And we're never really taught how to be happy, right? Like even in school, we take math and science, but nobody teaches us how to be happy. So no wonder if we're not feeling as happy as we might think or want to be. Part of the problem is that we were never taught. So that's where the research really comes in and can help.
And I think individuals, I mean, you touched on gratitude, you touched on, different ways of that positive reinforcement intrinsically for ourselves, so we can start to feel those feelings of happiness. And as you say, work that muscle. It's hard for some people, though, I find, would you consider people in kind of maybe two silos, the negative thinkers, the positive thinkers, and, you definitely can see those characteristics of both.
For sure. I kind of think some people are more like Eeyore, And that's okay, because like I said, the goal isn't to be happy all the time. And so what I think is really empowering about the idea of happiness is that knowing that no matter how we're feeling right now, we all have the capacity to be happier. And so that, I think, is really, really key. And there was an 80-year longitudinal study done at Harvard, and they found that the number one predictor of both long-term health and happiness was social connection. So having at least one or two people in your life that you can go to and confide in, and they can confide in you. And I say this a lot because I think it's so powerful, especially in this age of technology, to actually take the time, like you and I are right now, to actually have a conversation in person. So if you're watching right now and like thinking, where do I even start? Because it can be very overwhelming too, to figure out like, how do I even start? Pick up the phone and call someone, because having that connection is the most impactful thing that you can do to boost your happiness.
Amazing. Let's take this into the workplace. Let's talk about health, wellness, and happiness of employees. You walk into a work site, the culture is a certain way. This industry of employee and corporate health is really looking at that angle of culture and the environment and the supports in place to help move that dial. Can you lend a couple of tips or thoughts on being happy at work? It's not always easy.
No, it's definitely not.
Yeah.
So it comes down to, like, there's certain things in our life that we can change, and there's certain things that we can't. And especially in a workplace setting, there are a lot of things around us that we can't change. And even in that situation, there are certain things that we can. So one of the really key pieces is creating things around you that make you happy. So whether that be on your desk, like having a picture of your family, or having pictures of things that you love around you, having an environment that has a couple things in it that make you happy is really, really significant, because there is research that shows that it's not enough to just want to be happy. The environment around you, when you're in an environment where something makes you happy, it's much more profound.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it's also important to remember that our happiness, it comes from within us. So it doesn't come from externally in, it comes from in out. And especially in a work setting, realizing that we have a personal responsibility to choose happiness. And there's going to be frustrating and difficult and challenging times and amazing times. And that's part of the work environment. And in every situation, we can always look for something good and try to focus on the positives. And this can be really difficult because our brain isn't actually wired for happiness.
No.
And this was something that I was really shocked to learn when I started getting into the research. Our brain is wired to make sure that we get enough food, that we have shelter, and that we pass on our genes. And so part of the reason, if we're sitting there wondering, like, why am I not so happy? It's because we actually have to rewire our brain to look for happy things, to choose to find the good in things. And then from there, it just builds. And so in the work setting, especially, doing things throughout the day that shift your mood towards happiness is key. So maybe, for example, there's certain music that you like to listen to that makes you happy, or going out for a 15-minute walk, even when you don't feel like it, when you come back, you feel better. So knowing for yourself, what are those little things that I could be able to do throughout the day to boost my mood when I'm not feeling that high or that happy? It sounds like really small things. And yet, when you look in terms of the research, those small things are the big things.
Well said. My goodness. It's so exciting to talk to you and learn all about this. Happiness is such a big, big thing that I find that people just want to learn more about, and I really thank you for sharing those really great ideas. I could talk to you all day long, but we do have to tie up. Any final thoughts as we tie up our very exciting discussion today?
Yeah, when I tell people I research happiness, by far the number one question I get asked is, like, what is the one thing? What's the one thing I need to do or buy or know or say or whatever in order to be happy? And I really, at the end of the day, based on all of the research I read and done myself, like, there's no magic pill for happiness. Like, every one of us, we're the pharmacist, and it's up to us to figure out what makes us happy and then to take action to do that, because happiness isn't this passive thing that's going to come to us. It's a practice that we have to do. We're never going to arrive at happiness as a destination. It's learning how every single day to create this journey so that we are happier, and knowing that nobody's going to do that except for us.
Well said. Thank you, Gillian, so
Thank
much.
you.
Congratulations and best of luck with everything you're doing.
Thank you. Thanks for chatting with you. It was great.